Hey everyone, it's Holmes from Home Storybooks, and today I'm here to talk to you about the importance of the gay bookshop. I'm going to talk to you about some of the bookshops I've gone to, some of the bookshops I want to go to, and why it's important. Let's get into it, shall we? Hares Hyenas is a queer bookshop in Melbourne on 61 Johnston Street, Fitzroy, and it's been open since 1991. I believe it's currently owned by Crusader Hills and Roland Thompson, who received a Globe Community Award for Excellence in Business for their service to the queer community. This is the first queer bookshop I went into, and I remember thinking before I even arrived that it would be pretty small, that it might not have a lot of stock, and so on. And then I went in, and there were books everywhere, all along the bookshelves, against a back wall, around the corner. The shop had displays, a coffee machine, regular events. I was stunned. Not only did I see James Baldwin, Alison Bechdel, Ali Smith, and more, but there were so many books on queer parenting, rare books, Australian queer books, comics, magazines from overseas, and that elusive breed, queer genre fiction. I was almost overwhelmed by my options, and in the end I picked up Girl Meets Boy by Ali Smith and Blue is the Warmest Colour by Julie Marot. I remember leaving and thinking I'd barely spent any time at all in there, thinking that I could live there, that if I sat down at a table with a chai latte, I could read any and all the books. Hares and Hyenas isn't just a bookshop. Like a lot of places I'll mention today, it's a community centre, a hub, and a performance venue. It's been open for 26 years, and I hope it'll be open for 26 years more. Little Sister Book and Art Emporium is located on 1238 Davey Street, Vancouver, and has been open since April of 1983, although originally it had another location. Originally owned by Bruce Smith and his late partner Jim Dever, or Diva, of whom the Jim Dever Plaza is named, it is owned by Don Wilson as of 2016. Davey Street is Vancouver's LGBTIQA sector. This street has a community garden where bears go and tend flowers and vegetables in their huge leather jackets and little pink gardening gloves. My wife and I stayed in Davey Street, and the person we rented our Airbnb from was a nurse at the Queer Sexual Health Clinic. Every doorway was covered in rainbow stickers, and everything was open until 3 or 4 in the morning. The street itself was as noisy as it was joyful. I was hopeful when I went into this bookshop, hopeful that I would find my new favourite book, maybe a Canadian queer classic that I'd never heard of before and would never see anywhere else, where I could find a book that's been on my to-read pile for ages. I loved this bookshop so much because it really did feel like a community hub. Most people walking into the shop knew each other, chatted, and the staff was super friendly and helpful. This feels like a queer bookshop in the sense that it's not just a bookshop. There's also loads and loads of pride gear, loads of sex toys and erotica books, and also trans gear like binders. On their website, they also have a list of resources and community spaces depending on your queer needs, but this place really has you covered if you're queer or not. Little Sister has survived over 3 decades of challenges, ranging from years of government harassment in the Supreme Court in regards to their obscene content, to 3 anti-gay terrorist bombings. Little Sister often ordered books from the United States in the 1980s and encountered serious difficulty when Canada Customs labelled their materials as obscene. Look at those empty shelves. My heart is so sad. Their stock was seized. They had nothing to sell, but they persevered. They had a partial victory in 2000 when Canada Customs was still allowed to label materials as obscene, but were warned against unfairly targeting gay and lesbian books. Imagine being that upset by a damn bookshop. Like, whoa. Little Sister is the very definition of we're here, we're queer, get used to it. I didn't pick anything up in the end, but I adored being in such a non-judgmental place. I loved talking to the staff, as I said before, and just hanging out amongst the shelves was really cool. I discovered Armistead Maupin, who's a very well-known queer author, and I loved being able to hang out in a place that was clearly made for me, that made space for me and my wife. So those are the queer bookshops I have visited. I visited them when I was about 20 and 21. When I was younger, I did visit lots of bookshops with queer sections in them. They always stopped me in my tracks. I remember this one specific time I spotted a queer shelf off in the corner of a shop, and I just stood there desperately trying to memorize the titles. I was shopping with my dad, and I didn't want him to know that I was gay. I was terrified that if I went up to the desk to pay for it, they would know, or the shop person would be homophobic and insult me for buying it. I know, it sounds insane, but I was 14 and I knew so little about gay culture. It's how I learned the titles of Morris, Edge of 17, and Breakfast on Pluto. These books and films were my lifeline and my window and my door into queer culture. Now, let's talk about the gay bookshops I would love to visit. Gay is the Word is located on 66 Marchmont Street, Bloomsbury in London, and it's the only specifically queer bookshop in the UK. It's been open since 1979 and was originally founded by gay icebreaker members, who were one of the groups to use the shop as a hub to communicate, talk, have monthly meetings, and enjoy each other's company. There's a monthly trans group there, and there's been a lesbian discussion group that's been going on for 30 years at that shop. Much like Little Sister, Gay's the Word has struggled with raids of their shop where thousands of pounds worth of stock would be seized, particularly in the early 80s. Books by Tennessee Williams, Gore Vidal, and Christopher Isherwood were seized in one of the raids. Essentially, they were also importing books from the US, and there were discrepancies around the Obscene Publications Act in the UK, and Customs Consolidations Act meant that they weren't allowed to import books. However, if the same books were published in the UK, they would be legal. Yeah, Gay is the Word served as a meeting place for the London lesbian and gays support the miners group in the 1980s, and now is a fixture amongst London's cultural hotspots. Lots of booktubers have visited, and I know a couple of people have picked up Dana Smith's new collection from there. I love that collection, and I want to go so bad. It looks so cute and so small, and I'm so into it. For me, queer bookshops are so important because they're somewhere I can socialize, I can be among books, which is one of my favorite things, and I know it's a safe space. I don't drink, and while I love going to queer bars, I went to see Peppermint from Drag Race Season 9 perform with a friend of mine and had such a good time. Everyone was so lovely. I also love going to spaces where nightlife isn't strictly the focus. Bookshops are those spaces for me, for sure. Bureau of General Services Queer Division, or BGSQD, is another bookshop I would love to visit. It was opened in 2012 by Greg Newton and Donnie Jochum. It's in NYC on 208 West 13th Street, room 210, and holds film screenings, book clubs, and workshops. They curate about 5 art shows a year and allow queer artists to showcase their work. They also do lots and lots of zines that you wouldn't find anywhere else in the world. Considering they're one of the last queer bookshops in Manhattan, if not the last, I would definitely check out this place, considering how important NYC is to the queer community. They have a YouTube channel, so I will link that down below. It's wheelchair accessible, and there are all gender bathrooms, so anyone can go, and I want to go so bad. I would love to go to Glad Day Bookshop in Toronto on 499 Church Street. It opened in 1970. It is the oldest queer bookshop and also Toronto's oldest surviving bookshop. They have a cafe and a cocktail bar, an event space and a dance club. Their stock looks totally excellent, and they have so many rare old books as well as young fiction, trans fiction, memoirs, and black studies. The original owner, Gerald Moldenhauer, has a beautiful website and a blog post about the Glad Day Bookshop with so many wonderful photos and original statements on censorship from the 1970s, so I will link that down below. He talks about carrying books in a knapsack from one gay meeting to another, making space for himself and for others, and it just feels so meaningful to read his words. In late 2011, it nearly closed, but thanks to community members, the shop was saved. This is what I'm talking about. It's never about the money. It's always about the community. Always. So many shop owners lose so much money over the years of their shop being open, whether it was seized stock or being taken to court, but they persisted and they made groundbreaking progress while they did so. So many of these bookshops created mailing lists where you could be sent books directly without being worried or being outed, where queer literature could be sent to your door. So many of these bookshops were the beating heart of movements where people found themselves, they found each other, and they found love. And that love is queer. That's it. That's all for this discussion video. Thank you so much for listening today. Do you have a favorite queer bookshop? And if so, where is it? I'd love to make a list and to visit as many as I can in my lifetime. What's your favorite queer book you read recently? Mine's Tomboy Survival Guide by Ivan Coyote. I love their work so much. Oh man, now I really want to open a queer bookshop. Kickstarter, let's go. Bye everyone!